Turn your Bibles to Galatians because we are still hanging our hats here. And last week we just opened up part 1, just dealt with the first verse. Today we're going to finish up verses 2 to 5. And we're going to look at Galatians chapter 6 verses, I'm going to read 1 to 5, but we're going to focus on verses 2 to 5. If you have it, say amen. Amen. Let me read. Brethren, even if anyone is caught in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, each one looking to yourselves, so that you too will not be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But each one must examine his own work, and then he will have reason for boasting in regard to himself alone, and not in regard to another. Verse 5. For each one will bear his own load. I am
progressing towards maturity in Christ, because I am accepting my responsibility to grow in Him.
Amen. Amen. Just a quick review. Last week we just dealt with verse 1. You who are spiritual are to restore the one who has fallen into sin. And we identified who the brethren were, and we had identified who the fallen one was, and we had identified who the spiritual were, and then we identified who the others were. And most of us fit in the group of the spiritual. Yeah, most of us fit in the group of the spiritual. Some of us, at one time or another, we was that one who had fallen and got caught up, thank you. And some of us are part of the others. In other words, we were looking and laughing and figuring out and judging and condemning, but we have grown from that sense. Amen. We had talked about that. Today, I want to hang my hat on verses 2 to 5. And the first thing we want to start with is bear one another's burdens. Not sins. Burdens.
Yes.
Not sins. Burdens. Growing up, and at one time or another, you all may have gotten caught up into some mischievous activities. And you know how sometimes you conspire to do mischievous activities. And you had your peers and your peer groups and your friends who were engaged in these mischievous activities. And you partnered together to do these mischievous activities, which we would now call sin. Mischievous activities. It could have been some of anything. It could have been, mine was, I was a shoplifter. Confession is good for the soul. I was a shoplifter, and walking with some. I'm not gonna put anybody else out there. I'm just gonna take ownership myself. I was a shoplifter. You had partners in shoplifting. A shoplifter, when you have a team. Now listen to me, y'all. Don't anybody do this. You have a team. You have a distractor. A distractor would distract the cashier or the people watching so that you can pocket something. And a distractor puts him or herself between the person and you so you can live. But now we got these eyes in the sky. So now they kind of figured that out. But I remember when I had a distractor, he didn't do a good job distracting because I got caught. We were partners in sin. You and I are not called to bear one another's sins. Here he says, bear ye one another's burdens. Burdens. Let's identify what burdens are. Burdens could be a person was displaced due to a hurricane. That's a burden. Person could have been displaced because he or she lost a job. That's a burden. Person could be having some emotional issues because of death in the family. That's a burden. What do? We bear one another's burden. Somebody may be struggling in education. Somebody may be struggling with various things in life. The idea of bearing one another's burdens is to come alongside of, non-judgmental, come alongside of and be a prop, be a crutch, be a walking cane to help somebody out. Why? You're a burden bearer. I know some of you are thinking, well, I got Jesus and that's enough. Well, even Jesus did not endorse that philosophy. Paul tells us that we ought to be burden bearers, burden sharers, because we are in this thing together. Amen. You are not a solo saint, even though you want to act like it. It is not you and Jesus against the world. Because it won't be just you and Jesus in glory. So therefore, while you are matriculating on this planet, going through this life's journey, listen, you need some burden bearers. Because you can't do it all by yourself. I had the misfortune of sitting at a table with a gentleman who bragged on himself. And he said he's mentoring some young men, and we had told him about various things that his mentees could be engaged in and learn. And he had the audacity to say, all they need to learn, they can learn from me. Wow. I looked at him and I said, does your pastor know this is your frame, your thinking? He said, yes. And he still assigned them to you? And so I had to find a new table. Whenever you think you can do it all yourself without support, there's something wrong with you. Let me give you a scenario here. Peter, who was one of the apostles, was in jail. If Peter didn't have friends, they wouldn't have been praying for him. Peter's soul would have been in jail, praying, in jail, wondering why nobody's coming to visit him, in jail, wondering why God is not intervening, because he was in it by himself. But no, Peter was a smart man. He developed what we call Christian friends. Now listen to me, y'all. Listen to me, y'all. Some of y'all brag about your unsaved friends and how your unsaved friends treat you better than your Christian friends. Now that may be true sometimes. But you still need to develop some good Christian friends. Let me tell you why. You need to be a good Christian friend first, yourself. But when you develop friendships with born-again believers, they can intercede for you when you ain't even praying for yourself. Why? You need some helpers, burden bearers. You need somebody who is going before the Lord before you day and night, keeping your name before God. And only Christians can do that one for you. Burden bearer, you need to have some good Christian friends. Somebody who's going to pray for you. You need a good Christian friend, somebody who's going to encourage you. First thing we say is Christian friends. These Christian friends, now let's take the qualification for a Christian friend. They need to be saved. Christian. Now listen, I'm going to insult some of you. You don't care if they're fundamental, evangelicals, throw all that out the window. They need to be born again Christians. Born again Christian friends. Somebody who's going to pray for you. Somebody who's going to encourage you. Watch this, from the Word of God. Now you don't need no inspirational teachers. You know, they can inspire you, but inspiration is just like eating a donut in the middle of the day. Give you a quick rush, but you're going to come falling down. You need somebody who's going to give you an encouraging word from the Word that will lift you to do the will of the Word. And that comes from good, solid Christian friends. So you need them to be praying for you. You need them to be encouraging to you. You also need them to hold you accountable of your conduct.
Amen.
Okay, you better answer that. All right. No, not seriously. All right. Watch this. So they got to hold you accountable. You need a good Christian friend who's not scared of you.
Right? Come on now.
He or she cannot be intimidated by you. They need to be able to tell you about you. Okay, hold it. That's a harsh way to speak to your husband. It's a harsh way to speak to your wife. Uh-oh. I'm sorry, that you shouldn't be doing that because, listen, a good Christian friend will hold you accountable. And don't say, my best friend, my only Christian friend is my spouse. Stop it. Now, your spouse is your partner, your friend. We got that. But you need to have some Christian friends outside of your spouse. Because your spouse is not with you 24/7. And when your spouse gets tired of talking to God about you, you need somebody else who's going to talk to the Lord about you. Because your spouse can say, Lord, I'm here again about her. Lord, I'm here. You need somebody that's going to go down also. Oh, you need, stop it. You need to build a plethora of good Christian friends. I have a Christian friend who said to me, he said, Wilson, I got to thank God for you. I said, uh-oh. Whenever somebody sets you up like that, you got to sit back and say, oh, Lord, what are you about to say? He said, you're the only guy I know who gets personal. Really? He said, man, you're the only guy who asks me all these deep personal questions. Getting all in my business. I said, well, you do that to me too. He said, I'm older than you. Listen, a good accountability from a good Christian friend is good. Because, watch this, it keeps you minded that God has somebody watching. You need to have a good Christian friend. One that's going to pray for you, encourage you in the Word, and one that's going to hold you accountable. Why? Life can throw you some curves. Life can be difficult at times. And you need to have some good burden bearers. The Lord threw a curve this week because the storm, the weather people said something's going to happen. And you know, I didn't like the rest of the folk. I just, you know, I presumed. I was telling my wife and I was counting on going to school late and everything, getting canceled. And I'm saying, nah, the devil is a lie. It's just going to be a dusty. Y'all need to go to school. Y'all need to go to work. Y'all need to go. And so, you know, they did. And I'm just all disappointed because it was dangerous coming home. Y'all should have stayed home. But anyhow, the Lord threw a curveball. And I was looking and saw the snow coming down. I said, okay, it's not going to be too bad. It's not going to be too bad. And then next snow started getting thicker. Then it started coming. I said, okay, I guess I better go home since everybody else is leaving work early. And so I went home. Took me from here to get to home, an hour and a half. Yeah. Lord threw a curveball. Yeah. Then it hit me. I got to shovel this stuff. I went outside and I saw a man with a truck. I said, maybe I'll catch him and then he will shovel me, do me so I don't have to worry about it. I said, the Lord provided a ramp. Praise the Lord. I was shouting in the garage, and then I had to go to the restroom, went to the restroom, came back, the man was gone. Then it hit me again. You got to shovel this stuff. I was reading Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. Bear ye one another. I said, who's going to help a brother bear his burden? Who's going to think? Next thing you know, my brother pulls up with a snowplow. Snow blower. What a burden bearer. I said, boy, you want something to drink? You want some hot cold? What do you want, bro? I love a good burden bearer. Boy, he relieved my burden. That's what burden bearers do. And in relieving my burden, I was free to celebrate with him for a job well done. When somebody is a burden bearer, listen, the aim of a burden bearer is that they relieve you of a burden, but they are not excusing you of responsibility. Right. Why? Because it needed to be done before the missus got home, so that she would have a clear path to the driveway. Watch this. Not only should you have good Christian friends who will be burden bearers, but you need to understand that this fulfills the law of Christ. Now, some of y'all get upset, well, not upset, y'all constantly remind me of how sarcastic I can be sometimes. And it's true, but I do it in love. And being sarcastic is just the way the Lord made me. All right? And I enjoy, I like having fun, like joking and all that stuff, and I can take a joke. But it is biblical. Because Paul is being a little sarcastic. He says, this fulfills the law of Christ. Now, Paul, why would you say law of Christ? Well, because he's dealing with some Judaizers. And they were in the crowd. And he said, hold on, I want to let you know about a better law than the one y'all been following. I'm showing you about a law that's higher than that. I'm showing you about a law that has been consolidated to two things. Love God and people. Yes. And here he goes. He says, what? This is the law of Christ. What? That you love one another. Yes. You show that you are fulfilling the law of Christ when you bear one another's burdens, which means we love one another. It is time to stop saying I love you without action. Yes. I know a number of people who are offended by the various people who have had to live through mass shooting, and the kids, the synagogue, and the various other places, and they're saying sad to say it, to the Christian community and to the politicians, keep your prayers and thoughts. We want to be safe. In other words, love without action is a waste of time. Amen. It's nothing more than an expression. Yes. And watch what he's saying. Paul said, hold it. We express our love in bearing one another's burden. That's how you do it. You can't say I love you and not willing to suffer for me. Now, the next verse, he moves on to say, now, because Paul is trying to guard and help the born-again believers, after you look at verse 3, he goes to explain. Now, for if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. All right, for if anyone thinks. Now, it's a danger in thinking. When you're thinking wrong, you're thinking more highly of yourself than you ought to. So watch what he says. For if anyone thinks he is something, watch this, when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Watch this. But each one must examine his own work. And then when we have reason for boasting in regard to himself alone and not in regard to another. Watch what he's telling us. First, not only do we bear one another's burden, but he says now, if you want to think, first of all, beware of self-deception.
Come on. Yeah.
Beware of self-deception. There's nothing wrong with thinking. There's nothing wrong with thinking at all. But when you start thinking that you are better than somebody else, you have deceived yourself. You may, in your mind, look better. In your mind, you may articulate better in your mind, but you're no better.
That's right.
So be aware of self-deception. When your life is surrounded by I, you have deceived yourself. When you are the best at this, when you are the best at that, when there isn't anything you can do better than somebody else, when you are this, you're the cream of the crop, you are the cherry on top, you have deceived yourself.
Amen.
Paul said, you're no good to the kingdom, thinking so highly of yourself. Your arrogance meets us before we see you. Why? Because you won't help a person who has fallen. You'll be of no help to them. You'll be of no help to a person who's struggling with a burden because you think more highly of yourself. I would have never been caught in that situation. Stop it, you don't know. The problem is we don't watch you 24 hours, 7 days a week. We already know your biggest struggle is you. Beware of self-deception. Verse 4 helps us to understand when we look at examine. You need to be your own critic. Now listen, we're not talking about poor self-esteem. No, we're not talking about that. You need to learn how to criticize constructively yourself. In an interview, some in the day used to ask this question: what are your strengths? What are your strengths? What do you do well? There isn't anything wrong with that. That means you know what you do well. Yeah, this is why I do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And then they'll ask, what are some of your weaknesses? And some people have the mitigated gall to think long and hard. Can I get back to you next week? What are my weaknesses? What is it that I don't do well? Well, you know, I'm so thorough, I don't even think about that. That's a danger. Why? You cannot boast about what God is doing and has done and is doing in your life and the improvements he has been making if you can't observe your own weaknesses. You got to be your own critic. You need to know what it is that I need to correct. I need to examine me. Listen, the idea of verse 4, it says stop examining everybody else. There's a reason why he's saying this. Stop criticizing and being a fruit inspector of everybody else's life. Listen, look at you.
Amen.
Listen, if I were to ask you, what's wrong with Donald Trump? Woo! We wouldn't be able to fill this church up. Oh, man. We wouldn't be able to fill this. Ooh, Jesus. Now, what's wrong with you? You can't even find enough stuff to go on the screen. But in reality, the same critique that we use towards somebody else, you got to use on yourself first. There's a reason. When others die, they're not going to appear before the judgment seat of you. Look at that verse again, verse 4. is telling us, and hopefully we can get it. But each one must examine. Check out your own works. Now listen, now you're looking at your works, you're not just looking at your attitude. You're looking at your attitude in relationship to the attitude of Christ. Uh-oh. Because in order to critique yourself, you got to look at somebody better than yourself.
Come on.
And that's not looking at me and you and your neighbor. So I can't say, look at your neighbor. Neighbor, I look better than you. Hey, that's fine. But I look better than you. Then y'all going to argue who looks best. Then you're going to pull in a third party. Who looks the best? I said, neither one of y'all. I look better than both of y'all. Then we pull another. Listen, but when you're looking at Jesus and you are looking at you, you are going to find you have some fault. Pilate said about Jesus, I find no fault. But the mirror will tell us, well, you got some fault. So you look at your attitude towards the attitude of Christ. How did Christ handle difficult people? How did Christ handle people who did not receive him? How did Jesus handle? How did Jesus handle rejection? How did Jesus handle disappointment? How did Jesus handle adversity? What was his attitude about his enemies? This is what we examine. You examine your works, your activities, your behavior. Not looking at how this person did it. You got to look at it, how did Jesus do it? And everything is examined by the perfect law of liberty, which is Jesus the Christ, the living word. So whenever we examine ourselves, it's always in devotion. Lord, I'm looking at me. And right now, I don't look like you. You need to make some changes right now. Whenever you can critique others easier and more extensively and thoroughly than you do yourself, you are deceiving yourself. All right, let's move on. We hung out there long enough now. Now look at the last verse. For each one will bear his own load. Now some translations like to keep the word burden there, but other translations start in verse 2 and says, burden. Bear ye one another's burden. Verse 5, he shifts and says, each person has to bear their own load. Now, Paul, we know you're an intelligent man. We know you like to play on words. We understand that you're articulate. We understand you're well educated. But didn't you miss something? You told us to be burden bearers. And then in verse 5, you told us to bear our own load. Now, hold it. If we ought to be burden bearers, sharing the load, how is it that you're telling me in verse 5 I got to bear my own load? Now, something's not congruent here. Something is off-kilter here. You're telling me at one minute, come alongside and help a brother and sister out, but then all of a sudden you're telling me to shift. I got to carry my own load. Paul, where you going? Well, let me tell you where Paul's going here. Paul is looking at us as soldiers. He's looking at us as the people of God. And he's not absolving anybody of any responsibility. Now, there are two things happening. When we're bearing one another's burdens, we're in a support role with one another because we're friends, Christian friends, holding one another accountable. We're praying for one another, encouraging one another in the word. This is what we're doing as burden bearers. We're supporting one another. We're helping. We're coming alongside. We're fighting with, fighting for. We're burden bearers. But in verse 5, he says, you got to carry your own load. Now, me being your burden bearer, I'm not designed to be your lifetime armor bearer. When we go to Africa, and this is bad when you get misinformation from people who've never been anywhere. People who've never been anywhere try to tell you all kinds of stuff what you ought to do when you go someplace. They have never been. They got all their expertise. They'll tell you every minute. You know what? I was told, this is what I was told. I was told, you better be careful because you're going to a place where people are poor and they're going to be stealing from you. So I was told. So what I used to do, I used to carry my stuff close. I carried my stuff close because I was told from people who've never been anywhere, never been off the continent of North America. They've never been anywhere. They probably hadn't even been out in 19320 zip code. But they were telling me this as if they had been somewhere. You need to make sure because you don't want your passport stolen and all this stuff. And I'm buying into this because I hadn't been anywhere. I hadn't been out of the country, so I didn't know. It's my first time going. So I'm bracing myself. So, and I would have to go preach. I'd be holding my bag so close. That's the meeting. Why? Based on some misinformation from people who hadn't known anything. Right. So these people will come up and say, I'll carry your bag. Nah, God, I got my bag. That's right. I'll carry your bag. I realized something. This bag was getting heavy. And so what I was going to do is take all the valuables out and then let them carry their bag without the valuables. Stuff that I don't mind being stolen. Stuff that I don't mind. You go ahead and steal it, sell it. You know, ain't nothing in it. Go for it. And let me take out the valuables. You know, you have to do that in America too. But anyway, so the Lord just helped me with that. So the gentleman just took my bag. They didn't steal my bag, didn't open my bag, he just carried my bag. So he was telling me that I'm going to be your burden bearer for a while. I'm going to carry you a little. But when you go into the airport, you got to carry your own load. You got to pack your own bag. And when you do all that, it's saying you're responsible for your own stuff. Now, Paul, what are you telling us? Well, Paul is shifting on us. He's using this word load, which is equivalent to a backpack. And it's a backpack. Since it's your backpack, Sister Athena, can you take your jacket off and come put on your own backpack? Because I can't carry your load for you. You got to carry your own load. See, all this time I've been a burden bearer for Athena. I've been carrying her bag. But life tells us that as we mature in life, as we move in life, I don't carry your load for the sole purpose of you just observing me carrying your load. No. Some of us get it twisted. We think because somebody is helping us with our burden that they are now responsible for our lives. That's not the case. Some of us people have caused us to kind of miss it because we have been carrying you, doing for you. Now yourself is not doing for your own self. You are depending on everybody to carry your load everywhere you go. Every time you go somewhere, instead of you paying the bill, somebody else paying the bill. Every time you do this, instead of you doing it, somebody else is doing it. Listen, Paul says there's coming a time you got to be responsible in your examination to carry your own load. It is your responsibility to carry your own load. Why? God saved me for me. He saved you for you so that you might please Him. Carry your own load.
You preach.
Now then, listen. I don't care how heavy it is, because I've been carrying it all this time to give you time to mature, to give you time to get strengthened, to give you time to become responsible. Now it's time for me to let you carry your own load. Go where you gotta go. So Paul said, it's time for you to bear your own load. That's why we say it's your responsibility to grow. When I hear people say, I can't grow, I said, why not? Well, the preacher, I said, let me tell you a secret. It's not their fault. It's your responsibility. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a Bible? You do have a Bible. You probably got 6 or 7. When the last time you read one? How about we read a chapter? How about even a paragraph? How about even a sentence? Listen, you have been supplied. Somebody's been bearing a load for you. It's your responsibility to grow. I don't know how to pray. You mean your church don't pray? Oh, your church don't pray? You mean to tell me, well, I have never been to the church prayer meeting. That means you have never been to the church prayer meeting. You have never been to the church early enough to get in on the praying, where at least you could copy somebody's prayer until you can get better at praying. It's your responsibility. You got to bear your own load. Well, that's what Paul's saying. Hold it. There comes a time when we got to bear each other's burdens, but it's so that we can become our own load-bearing person. Watch what he says. Listen to my 2 points on this. Then I'm going to let you go. First of all, in your bearing your own load, for each one will bear his own load, your own responsibility. It's your responsibility to examine yourself. Amen. Spiritual self-examination. Where are you spiritually? That's why we have communion. Yeah. Communion is not just so that you can be opening the package, putting the cracker in your mouth and drinking. No, you got to examine yourself. Yes. Where are you spiritually? Yeah. What have you learned biblically? Yeah. What are you applying spiritually? What have you learned about God since the last time you had communion? Who have you told about Jesus since the last time you had communion? What changes have been made in your life since the last year? Bear your own load. It's your responsibility to examine yourself spiritually. Last thing, what corrections have you been making? Uh-oh. Who have you discovered? The Bible, you discover, oh, we need to forgive. Now, who have you not forgiven? You know, God does not show us stuff so you can say he showed me something. He showed you something so you can do some correcting. Yes. God is not in the business of just hearing and showing up stuff. There's purpose to it. You know? Every time I think about her, every time I think about him, because every time I turn around, they're wearing my outfit. And I'm envious of that. Okay, what corrections have you made? But the Spirit of God didn't show you that just for the sake of showing you. Yeah. He did it so you can be corrected. Yes. Instead of being green with envy, be pure with love. Yes. Instead of being envious of a person who has your outfit, go buy him a new outfit. Instead of being uncharitable, become charitable. Instead of being mean and nasty and listen, there should be some correction to your tone. Why? God does not reveal our imperfections so that we would stay in that imperfect mode. He reveals it so change will take place. That's called spiritual transformation. Well, burden bearer, load share. We help one another with the purpose that you will learn how to, watch this, help somebody else bear their burdens. And you should have learned from somebody who helped you bear your burdens to accept responsibility for your own spiritual development. I appreciate those who have mentored, poured into me one way or another, and yet are. Some things you learn from people that you don't realize you're learning it until after they're gone. You don't realize that, and you don't realize that they had taught you something that you yourself didn't know you were being taught at that time. And it's amazing. Parents do that with children. Mentors do that with mentees. Employers do that with employees. And people do this, and you don't realize it until after you are faced with the situation that you have to exercise some judgment, decision, and do some action. So I'm finding myself learning. No one had ever taught me how to drive a stick. on the floor. Let alone, no one ever taught me how, back in the day, remember the stick on the column? No one ever taught me that. But I watch some people. And I thought it was a cadence thing. And that's what I thought originally, that it was a cadence thing. And then, and you know how you do when it's shifting. And I thought it was a cadence thing. And so my knucklehead self went behind the wheel, and I just started trying to drum up a cadence, and then realized that's not what it was based on. So I started watching a little more, and I noticed that the people who were shifting were doing it based on the speed or the RPMs. And based on the speed of the RPMs, that's when they would make the shift. But they made the shift when they first had to hit the clutch. They didn't just arbitrarily just shift. They had to hit the clutch. So they would shift. Now, nobody educated me on. I had to observe this. I remember one time driving, and I was asked when I was in Texas to drive somebody's little pickup truck. I thought it was an automatic pickup truck. I sure did. And that's the danger when you do stuff without asking questions. When you just say, okay, I'll do it. No, you need to start asking questions. What do you want me to do? And how does this thing work? But when you're young, you just go with the flow. And so the guy said, yeah, you can bring my truck. And so I'm getting in the truck. I'm looking on the deal. I didn't see P, R, N, D. I'm saying, then I looked on the floor. I see 3 pedals. I see one that looked like a brake, but it wasn't a brake. I see a brake and I see accelerator. And then it hits me. I'm in a 3-speed truck. But I didn't see on the column of the steering wheel where gear 1 was, where gear 2 was, and where gear 3 was. I was in a twixt between 2. And I had to figure this out. So the Lord allowed my mind to go back when I saw somebody driving a truck with no labels. And I remember he pulled the stick in and raised it up. Then he pushed the stick out and went down. Then he pushed the stick up. So that told me 1 must be in and up. 2 must be down and in. And 3 must be all the way up and out. No one educated me, but just by bearing the burden, observing. You'll be surprised when you observe how other people are handling stuff. That's God's way of teaching you, teaching me how we can handle stuff. You and I are responsible to bear one another's burdens, but you are indeed responsible to carry your own load.